Okay, so here is our second to last installment of Wayside School is Falling Down, our read aloud. We are on chapter 26, The Mean Mrs. Jules. Everybody in Mrs. Jules' class thought she was a very nice teacher. They were wrong. There was no such thing as a nice teacher. If you think you have a nice teacher, then you're wrong too. Inside every nice teacher, there is a mean, rotten teacher bursting to get out. The nicer the teacher is on the outside, the meaner the teacher is on the inside. As Mrs. Jules was changing the bulletin board before class, a mean, rotten voice whispered inside her brain. Give the children lots of busy work today, it said, and then make them do it over again if their handwriting isn't perfect. Mrs. Jules tried very hard to ignore the voice. She didn't like giving busy work. Instead, she tried to teach each children three new things every day. She believed that if they could learn three new things every day, they would eventually learn everything there is to know. There are some classes where the teachers give so much busy work that the children never learn anything. What do you care if the children learn anything? Asked the mean, rotten voice. It's not your job to teach them. It's your job to punish them. Keep them in at recess. Hit them with the yardstick. The bell rang and the kids scurried to their desks. We're going to learn three new things today, Mrs. Jules announced. How to make pickles, 7 plus 4, and the capital of England. All the children paid close attention. The capital of England is London, said Mrs. Jules. 7 plus 4 is 11, and pickles are made by sticking cucumbers in brine. On her desk she had a box of cucumbers and a vat of brine for a demonstration. Okay, Joe, said Mrs. Jules, how much is 7 plus 4? Joe shrugged. But I just told you, Joe, said Mrs. Jules. Weren't you listening? I don't know, said Joe. Okay, who can tell me how pickles are made? Yes, Jason. 11, Jason declared. Mrs. Jules frowned. That's a correct answer, said Mrs. Jules, but unfortunately I didn't ask the right question. Can anyone tell me how many pickles are made? Yes, Bibi. In London, said Bibi. Well, I suppose they make some pickles in London, said Mrs. Jules. Okay, let's start again. Calvin, what is the capital of England? Could you write England on the board? Asked Calvin. I can do a lot better when I can see the question. Mrs. Jules wrote England on the board. Oh, okay, said Calvin. Now that he saw the question, the capital of England is E. Yes, that is one capital of England, Mrs. Jules had to admit. Okay, I will say it one more time. What? The capital of England is London. Isn't that where they make all the pickles? Asked Jenny. No, they don't make all the pickles in London, explained Allison, just 11 of them. Where do they make the rest of the pickles? Asked Stephen. Shut up, shouted Mrs. Jules. Well, that does it. You're all staying in for recess. Everyone stared at her. Mrs. Jules had never told anyone to shut up. It was against the class rules for anyone to express that. If you did, you had to write your name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Mrs. Jules put her hand over her mouth, then took it away. Oh dear, I'm so very sorry, she said. I don't know what came over me. She wrote her own name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Perhaps you'll learn the lesson before you write it down, she suggested. Everyone, please take out a piece of paper and a pencil and a pickle, she said, and everybody laughed. A pencil, snapped Mrs. Jules. I meant to say a pencil. It just came out as pickle. I didn't know pickles came from pencils, said Jenny. I thought it came from cucumbers. I thought they came from London, said Todd. Mrs. Jules made an ugly face. Todd, didn't I just tell you to shut up? She asked. She picked up her yardstick and held it over Todd's head. Well, answer me, she demanded. Didn't I tell you to? Yes, said Todd. How dare you talk back to me, said Mrs. Jules. Didn't I just tell you to stop? Todd kept his mouth shut this time. Well, answer me, she demanded. Todd didn't know what to do, so he nodded his head. Keep still, ordered Mrs. Jules. Now I don't want you to say another word. Is that clear? Todd stared at her. Is that clear? She asked again. Yes, Todd said meekly. Mrs. Jules slammed down the yardstick. Todd quickly moved out of the way. The yardstick banged against his desk and broke in half. Mrs. Jules stared at the 18 inches she had in her hand. Oh my goodness, she said. I'm so sorry, Todd. I don't know what's the matter with me today. I must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. She put a check next to her name under the word discipline. Okay, let me try to make this very simple, she said. If I have 7 cucumbers, and then I get 4 more cucumbers, and then I drop all the cucumbers in brine and take them to the capital of England, what do I have? How many, and where am I? Huh? Said DJ. What? Asked John. Could you write the question on the board, please? Asked Rondi. Oh my gosh, Mrs. Jules yelled a third time. In a mocking voice, she said, Could you write the question on the board, please? You kids think you're so cute. Well, we'll see just how cute you really are. She picked up the vat of brine from her desk. How would you like it if I poured this on your heads? You won't be so cute when you're all shriveled up and covered with warts like pickles. She walked up and down the aisle, carrying the pickle juice and glaring at the children. No one dared to make a sound. She stopped next to Leslie. How about you, Leslie? She asked. Would you like pickled pigtails? Leslie trembled. Her pigtails wiggled. Well, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, Leslie, said Mrs. Jules, and if you don't answer them correctly, I'm going to dump this on your head. Leslie gulped. Question 1, said Mrs. Jules. How much is 7 plus 4? Leslie quickly counted on to her Leslie quickly tried to count on her fingers, but she didn't have enough. 11, she guessed. A look of disappointment came over Mrs. Jewell's face. Okay, question 2. What is the capital of England? London? Leslie said nervously. Rats, said Mrs. Jewels. Okay, question 3. She looked down at the vat of brine she was holding and shook her head. She thought for a moment and then she smiled. What is the name of my cousin who lives in Vermont? Leslie had no idea. She just had to try and take a wild guess. She closed her eyes and said, Fred Jules? Wrong! Exclaimed Mrs. Jules. She raised the vat of brine high above Leslie's head and started to tip it over. Paul jumped out of his seat. Those pigtails had once saved his life, and now it was his turn to return the favor. He pushed the vat of brine back the other way. He was just trying to push it up straight, but he pushed too hard, and it poured all over Mrs. Jules, drenching her. Paul froze in terror. Mrs. Jules blinked her eyes. Pickle juice dropped down her face. Thanks, Paul, she said. I needed that. The brine had cured her. She circled her name on the blackboard and sent herself home early on the kindergarten bus. Chapter 27, Lost and Found. Joy and Mauricia were best friends. They sat down on the grass to eat their lunches, but then Mauricia remembered she needed chocolate milk. She went to get some from Miss Mush. When she returned, she couldn't find her lunch. What had happened to my lunch? She asked. Joy looked up at her, then shrugged her shoulders. I set my lunch down right here, said Mauricia. You saw me, didn't you? Joy just shook her head. I put it here and then I went to Miss Mush's room to get some chocolate milk. I had a peanut butter and banana sandwich, and there's no way I can eat a peanut butter and banana sandwich without chocolate milk. Joy shrugged her shoulders. Mauricia, didn't you know what to do? Mauricia didn't know what to do. Can I have half a cup of your milk? Asked Joy. It was hard for Joy to talk because her mouth was full of peanut butter and bananas. Mauricia handed Joy the carton of chocolate milk. Joy took a big drink, then swallowed. Mauricia looked all around for her lunch. She crawled in the dirt as she searched through the bushes. Any luck? Asked Joy as she finished Mauricia's chocolate milk. I found it, Mauricia exclaimed. Joy coughed on chocolate milk. You did? She asked, and then coughed again. Mauricia crawled out of the bushes holding a paper sack. She sat down next to Joy and opened it. Is this your lunch? Asked Joy. No, said Mauricia. Too bad, said Joy. It's money, exclaimed Mauricia. Joy's eyes nearly popped out of her head as she looked at the paper bag. It was stuffed with dollar bills. They weren't just $1 bills. There were a few $5 bills, some $10 bills, but mostly $20 bills. We found $1 million, Joy whispered. We? asked Mauricia. They counted the money. It wasn't $1 million. It was $20,655. Let's split it, said Joy. You take half and I'll take half. Maybe I should show it to Louis, said Mauricia. Louis, exclaimed Joy, are you crazy? Let's spend it. We can buy a skateboard or a bicycle or a horse or a fancy car or an airplane. But I like taking the bus, said Maurice. You could buy ice cream, said Joy. All the ice cream you ever want for the rest of your life. She knew Mauricia loved ice cream more than anything else in the world. Mauricia smiled as she thought about it. No, I better show it to Louis. He'll know what to do. You'll just get into trouble, warned Joy. Louis will think you robbed a bank and you'll go to jail for the rest of your life. Louis knows I'm not a bank robber, said Mauricia. But what if the real bank robbers find out you have their money, said Joy. They'll come after you and murder you. Oh, I didn't think of that, said Mauricia. Yep, you better give that money to me, said Joy. Well, Louis will protect me, said Mauricia, and she walked across the playground. Louis was talking to Terence. He said, if you ever tie Leslie's pigtails to the tetherball pole again, I'll... Louis, look, said Mauricia, and she held the paper sack up in his face. No, thank you, Mauricia. I'm not hungry, said Louis. It's not my lunch, said Mauricia. Look inside. Louis took the bag from her and looked inside. Very nice, he said, then he gave it back. Now I want you to go untie Leslie and tell her. And suddenly he stopped talking and blinked his eyes. He looked at Terence, then he looked at Mauricia, then at Terence, then at Mauricia, then at the paper sack. Let me see that again, he said. Mauricia gave him the bag. Hey, what about me? Asked Terence. Get lost, Jack Frost, said Louis. Terence ran away. Did you rob a bank? Asked Louis. No, I found it in the bushes, said Mauricia. I believe you, said Louis. We'll have to put it in the lost and found. I know, said Mauricia. Whoever lost it is probably very sad. But if no one claims it in 2 weeks, you can have it, said Louis. He took the bag of money and headed to the office. Joy was waiting for Louis at the door. Hey, Louis, she said, I lost a bag full of money. Have you seen it? Help! Leslie screamed from the tetherball court. A week later, Mauricia was eating lunch alone. She was eating a piece of sweet potato pie. Joy was crawling around in the dirt looking for more bags of money. Mauricia, said Louis, I'd like you to meet someone. This is Mr. Finch. Mr. Finch was an old man with white hair and a long white beard. He shook Mauricia's hand with both of his hands. It's your money, isn't it? Asked Mauricia. Mr. Finch nodded. It was my life savings, he said. 50 years I made pencils. I got a penny for every pencil I made. I hate pencils, but finally I saved enough money to quit my job and do what I always wanted to do. What's that? Asked Mauricia. I'm going to open my own ice cream parlor, he said. Then he started to cry. When I lost the money, I thought I'd have to start making pencils again. Mauricia cried too. Here, I want you to have this, blubbered Mr. Finch. He gave her an envelope containing $500. It was the second largest amount of money Mauricia had ever had. And I will give you free ice cream for the rest of your life at my ice cream parlor, he promised. Thank you, said Mauricia. No, thank you, said Mr. Finch. I'm so glad someone as kind and as honest as you found it. There are so many dishonest people in the world. It's good to know there's still good people, too. They hugged each other. Joy crawled out of the bushes. Hey, who's that? She asked. That is Mr. Finch, said Mauricia said. It's his money. Look, he gave me a reward of $500, and I'll get free ice cream for the rest of my life. Well, what about me? Joy demanded. Don't I get anything? Oh dear, said Mr. Finch. I didn't realize there was someone else involved. Mauricia would never have found the money if it wasn't for me, said Joy. Why, what did you do? Asked Louis. I stole her lunch, said Joy proudly. Mr. Finch gave her a pencil. Okay. Thanks, guys.